Hi students, this is Mrs. Wismer, and because we're not meeting this Thursday, it being Valentine's Day and all, I have prepared just a little talk for you, and I'm calling it the 7 Deadly Errors. Now, of course, they're not really deadly, but they are things that I would like you to really look for in your writing and try to correct. So let's get started with the first one right away. Number 1 has to do with mislabeling the number 5 sentence opener. So let me ask you, is this particular sentence, does it contain a correct sentence opener for number 5? After living in Lincoln for a year, my family and I found a church. Now, this was labeled as a number 5 sentence opener. What is a number 5 sentence opener? Well, let's ask a few questions, okay? First of all, yes, it is a clausal, right? Number 5 is a clausal. Secondly, what needs to be present to make a clause? Okay, I hope you're all saying a subject and a verb, because that is what makes a clause. So, does this opener have both a subject and a verb? Let's look at it again. After living in Lincoln for a year. Nope, doesn't have a subject, doesn't have a verb. So what do we have here? If you said 3 prepositional phrases, you are correct. After living in Lincoln for a year. Now, the in Lincoln and for a year, those are really easy to tell that they are prepositional phrases. But what about after living? All right, put on your thinking caps and think of your phrases. First of all, is after on your preposition list? Yes, it is. Living ends in what? I-N-G. Is it acting as a noun? Yes, it is. It's the object of the preposition, right? That makes this a prepositional phrase. So if we were going to diagram this, this is what it would look like. After living in Lincoln for a year. Notice that in Lincoln describes the living. We lived in Lincoln and we lived there for a year. After living in Lincoln for a year, now go back to the beginning of it, my family and I, what's the verb? Found. What's the direct object? Church. A church. So in this case, after is a preposition because it's followed by a noun, an object of the preposition. A noun ending in ing and acting like a noun. I'm sorry, I should have said a word ending, not a noun ending. A word ending in ing and acting like a noun is a what? Gerund. That's right, it is a gerund. So, what do we say about all this? This means that you may write this way. You can use a sentence like this, but you cannot call it a number 5. You have to label it correctly. And if you're going to label this now correctly as a sentence opener, what number will it be? That's right, it will be a number 2 sentence opener. So keep that in mind. Now, here are some other examples of ways that you might be tempted to write, and it's okay. Just be sure you recognize it as a prepositional phrase, all right? Not as a clausal. Until waking up early on a wintry morning, I dreamed of sandy beaches. Without cringing, there we go. We have another preposition, without cringing, a gerund. Without cringing, I sliced open the laboratory frog. Since arriving, another preposition, since, and then another gerund. Since arriving, comma, we have yet to adjust to the new time zone. So do you see how those are all prepositional phrases? Keep that in mind because they aren't clausals, they are prepositional sentence openers. All right, let's move on to error number 2. What about the verb is? Well, if you have been in any of my classes before, you know that the verb is not the one you want to continually write with. So let's look at some examples and see how we might fix them. Here's one. Since there is a gap between the two morning services, Sunday school hour is at 9:45. Here is an example of how we can get rid of the word is and even make it a little easier to understand. Since we offer two morning services, comma, Sunday school, and then we can get a who which in here, which begins at 9:45, fills the between services gap. So there you have stronger verbs. You don't have the word is anywhere in this sentence, and you gained a which clause that doesn't have the word is in it as well. Most of you are tempted on your who whiches to always make them with an is or a has. And I would like to challenge you to keep from doing that. All right, here is another example. Here's another which clause, but again, it has the verb is. My church, which is called Grace Methodist, begins at 11 a.m. It is located in Crete. Steve Wynn is the main pastor of Grace Methodist. He is a wonderful man. Steve is currently teaching us Luke chapter 1. So how many is's do we have here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How could we strengthen this? And here's another thing you want to look for. If you say he is a wonderful man, well, that's nice, but what makes him so wonderful? Let's read the next slide and we'll see how we can strengthen all this. My church, Grace Methodist, and there we have an appositive, don't we? My church, Grace Methodist, begins at 11 a.m. Located in Crete, comma, we welcome the opportunity to minister to the many Hispanics working at the meatpacking plants. Our main pastor, Steve Wynn, always keeps my attention with his engaging preaching. He just started taking us through the book of Luke. Now, do you see how I didn't say he was wonderful, but I said something that he does really well, which gives you the impression that he is wonderful, but I painted a picture in your mind, and that's what you want to aim for. So here's what you should do. Whenever you have completed a first draft of a paragraph, read through it, count all the times you used is or was or have or has, and then see what you can do to get rid of those to strengthen your verbs. Okay, because have and has and is and was, they just don't carry any weight. They're very weak and really very boring to read, aren't they? Okay, let's move on to error number 3. This one says, try not to ramble. What does it mean to ramble? Well, it means to just start with a sentence that just keeps going on, and it turns corners, and it goes this way, and it goes that way, and you think it's never going to end. Well, some of you do tend to write that way because you're trying to write the way you speak. It's very hard to read and sometimes very hard to follow. So let's take a look at an example. It has a nice, neat, and interesting schedule, which is to have Sunday school for all ages during the first service, while for the second service, no Sunday school is held. First of all, we have has and is as our main verbs, right? And it does tend to wander and ramble. How many lines do we have here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines of writing in smaller print. Let's see how we can shorten this up and strengthen it. All right? Our Sunday schedule features 2 morning services, period. During the first service, comma, we also offer Sunday school for all ages. Okay, we still have 6 lines, but they aren't as full, and our verbs are much stronger. And it's perfectly easy to understand because we've divided it into 2 very clear sentences. So try not to ramble. Try not to let your sentences go on and on. Try to make them concise. All right, let's go on to number 4. For your information, when it comes to prepositional sentence openers, No comma is needed unless the phrase is more than 3 words. For example, after the party, we headed home exhilarated and exhausted. You do not need a comma after the party because it only has 3 words in it. Let's look at the second one. Without taking the time to check the gas gauge, Jim headed out of town. Okay, this is a very long prepositional phrase, so you will put a comma after gauge. There is one more exception in this that I have thought of since making these slides, so just listen carefully. The other example would be when you have a preposition with a gerund. It might just be 3 words, but you will probably want a comma after that particular prepositional phrase because gerunds just work differently. All right? So we have 3 ways to remember how to use the comma. If it has 3 words or less, no comma, unless it is a preposition with a gerund, right? And then the third thing is if it's more than 3 words, absolutely, put a comma before you continue with your sentence. Okay, that was a short one. Let's move on to number 5. We're getting closer to the end. Let's discuss the ly. Some of you are having a little trouble with your lys. You're squeezing them in, but they are not correct. So let's look at what we really want to do here. For our purposes, the ly dress up and the ly sentence opener must be an adverb. All right? Our school is a very homey and friendly place. Is friendly an adverb here? No, it is an adjective because it is describing place. Her cuddly bear cub snuggled up to his twin brother. Well, cuddly is an ly, but it's not an adverb. It's not describing snuggled, it's describing the cub. His silly little sister. Again, silly ends in ly, but it's not describing how she tries to tell the joke. It's describing the little sister. Now, as sentence openers, here would be some ways not to use the ly. Heavenly music filled my earbuds as we sailed down the highway. Well, heavenly isn't describing the sailed. It's describing the music, so can't use it for a sentence opener. Well, you can, but you just can't call it an ly. Do you understand me? Costly mistakes allowed the Patriots to win the Super Bowl. Okay, the mistakes are the things that were costly. It's not describing the allowed. So if you use this sentence or something like it, that's fine. Just do not call it an ly sentence opener. And then finally, stately officials lined the parade route, keeping alert for rabble-rousers. Again, stately is ly, but it's not describing the verb, which would be lined, okay? It's describing the officials who lined the parade route. So feel free to write these, but do not call them sentence openers, according to our chart, okay? So each of these modifiers describes a noun when they should modify a verb. So let's look at an example of that. Last night, Stanley diligently read through his paragraph, replacing his weak verbs with stronger ones. All right, diligently is an ly, and what is it describing? It's describing how Stanley read. This would be a correct usage of the ly. The doctor seriously perused his patient's records, looking for abnormalities. Seriously is an ly. It's describing how he perused, isn't it? Third one, little Jerry gazed sadly at his grandma's shattered window. He didn't mean to break it when he hit his home run. All right, sadly again is describing gazed. This time it comes after the verb, but it still describes the verb. So these would count for an ly dress up. Now let's look at what an ly sentence opener would look like. Diligently, Stanley read through his paragraph last night, replacing his weak verbs with stronger ones. Notice we just changed where it is. But notice something else. Diligently is followed by a comma. That's right. And your LYs should always be followed by a comma when they begin a sentence. All right? The next one, seriously, comma, the doctor perused his patient's records looking for abnormalities. All right? Sadly, little Jerry gazed at his grandma's shattered window. He didn't mean to break it when he hit his home run. Okay? Notice I did something else here. I didn't say Jerry gazed at his grandma's broken window because I went on to say he didn't mean to break it. I on purpose did not use break and broken in the same sentence. And I would encourage you to do the same thing in your writing. Try not to repeat a verb, even in another form, in the same sentence. Anyway, these were talking about LYs, and I hope you are understanding better how to write your LYs. All right, 2 left. Number 6, the run-on sentence. Let's talk about that. Here is one of them that showed up in some of the writing. Correctly, comma, and this is correct. The LY at the beginning is correct. It has a comma after it. Perfect. Correctly, they teach the Bible. That's why I love my church. Oops. We have 2 sets of subjects and verbs. Now, one other thing I want to show you is some people might write like this and put a comma after Bible. It's still wrong. It's still exactly like a run-on sentence, only because they put a comma there, now it's called a comma splice. But a comma splice and a run-on sentence are exactly the same. The only difference is that one of them includes the comma where the second sentence should begin. So if you were going to fix all this, you would put a comma after Bible. You would cross out the T, which means we're going to change it. You would put 3 little underline marks, which means what? Capitalize. That's right. That's the proofreading sign for capitalizing something. So you would make your signs, and then you would go back to write it correctly. Correctly, comma, they teach the Bible, period. That's why I love my church. They teach. That is the first set of subject and verb, so that already gives you 1 clause. That is in a contraction. There's your subject and your verb. That is the subject, is the verb. That is why I love my church. So you have 2 clauses here. They must be separated by a period. So watch out for those run-on sentences. Try not to write them. Finally, number 7. Misplaced modifiers. I saved this one for last because it's one of my favorites. It's so easy to put descriptive words in the wrong place, and then it can be kind of funny to read. So here's an example. She spied a puppy and a kitty on the way to the store. Now, if you read this at first glance, it sounds like she saw a puppy and a kitty, and the puppy and the kitty were walking on their way to the store. But that's not really what's happening here, is it? No. So let's change the order. On the way to the store, comma, she spied a puppy and a kitty. She's the one going to the store, not the puppy and the kitty. So we take the misplaced modifier, the words that we're describing, and we put them in the right place. And what is the right place? The right place for descriptive words is as close to the very thing they are describing as possible. All right? So here's an example. I've changed it a bit because I don't want to embarrass anyone, but I've changed it just a little bit and you'll get the idea. Here's a vacuum cleaner, all right? Here's our sentence. The vacuum is located in a closet on the very top floor of the house, which happens to be at the end of the hallway. Oh, wait a minute. Which? The house which? So the house happens to be at the end of the hallway? Of course not. What is at the end of the hallway? Oh, the closet. So if we're going to write it correctly and put the modifying words, the words that describe something, as close as we can to the thing they're describing, this is the way it would look. The vacuum is located in a closet. The closet, which happens to be at the end of the hallway. And where's the hallway? On the very top floor of the house. Do you see how everything that follows directly describes the thing that came before it? The which happens to be describes the closet, and on the very top floor describes where the hallway is. This would be a correct way to not have a misplaced modifier. And there you have it, 7 deadly errors, and I would like you to watch out for these things in your writing.